I get this question a lot. Why do you do it? It feels hopeless sometimes, especially when you hear stories like this. I get that it feels hopeless, but it's really not. It's really not hopeless. Compare where we are today to where we were in 1960 or even 1950 or 1940 or 30 or 20. As time moves on, as we move forward, we do progress. Society is moving forward. It's slow, and sometimes we take a couple steps back, like we did in this case, I feel, but we inevitably do take multiple steps forward. The Republican position is a losing position by default. They want to revert back to a time when things were better, whenever that was, whenever they think that was. It is inherently a losing position, in my opinion. We can't go back. We can only move forward. And move forward we shall. That's the progressive position. Society will change and grow and evolve, and we'll learn new things, and science will improve, and life will improve with it. That is how things work. As I think Barack Obama said, the moral arc bends toward justice. I know this feels hopeless sometimes. It's really not. It's really not. It feels that way. It isn't. Do you know how we improve our situation? By talking about it. By informing enough of the public in the United States that a tipping point forms, and the majority of the public wants one thing and is dead set on getting it. Spreading that idea to their friends and family, and before you know it, 55% want this thing, 60%, 70%, like gay marriage. It took a long, long time to reach a tipping point with gay marriage where more people wanted it than not, but we finally got there. And after we got there, we finally successfully enshrined gay marriage into the law through the Supreme Court. It feels hopeless. It's not. The way we win is by spreading the message so that everybody in the country eventually sees things this way. Just give it time, keep on working, do your best, and don't worry about the rest. Just keep going until we get what we want. That's it. That's all you got to do. Anyway, hopefully that gives you guys a little bit of comfort, because I know sometimes the subjects I cover are rough. They're hard to stomach. They're hard to face. I promise it's not as bad as it feels sometimes. The moral arc bends toward justice. Hey, this is Owen. If you're comfortable, leave your first name and state at the sound of the tiny truck backing up.
Hey, Owen. This is Ian from Arkansas. I have a friend who is Jehovah's Witness, and he attends church every Sunday, and we're pretty good friends, and he does all kinds of hobbies, and so I was wondering what your thoughts are on that, as far as being friends with outsiders and doing things that don't directly benefit the church. Thanks.
I told this story earlier, but I went to a barber, and it turned out that the barber was a Jehovah's Witness. I'll insert the story here in the final cut. The other day, I went to a new barber because I just moved. It wasn't far. It was only like 10 blocks, but I get there, and I'm, sitting in the chair. He's almost done, actually, with the haircut. So I'm sitting there, and he's like, "So what do you do?" And I said, "I'm a YouTuber. I talk about destructive cults, like Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses, that kind of thing." And he says, "No way. What got you into that?" And I said, "I grew up Jehovah's Witness." And he said, "I grew up Jehovah's Witness too." I was like, "Oh my God, what are the chances? That is so crazy, right?" And I said, it's really destructive to a lot of people." And he said, "Yeah, I still believe it. I'm a believer." And then he said, "How far along were you in the religion?" He said he was a publisher. I said I was born into it and baptized. And it seemed strange to me that he called himself a publisher, because that's not really something you would call yourself if you were baptized. So I think he was not baptized, at any point, but he was probably born into it and was trying to move along. But he was obviously gay. He made some comments that told me that he was gay. He had rainbow bag and things like that. So I think that he probably turned into a teenager and came out as gay, or realized he was gay or something, and left the religion realizing that he would be unable to be a part of it while also being who he is. But since he was never baptized, his parents never shunned him, because technically you don't have to shun somebody who was not baptized. A lot of people shun them anyways, but I'm guessing that that's probably why he called himself a publisher. So this guy is gay and has lived the past 30, 40 years of his life presumably hating himself for who he is, because he believes the religion still. And I tried to talk to him about it a little bit, and he refused to listen, refused to talk to me about it. Kept cutting me off and telling me that he believed it and that it was real and all this stuff. And as I stood up from the chair to leave, we were still kind of on friendly terms. He said, "So will I see you back in 5 weeks?" Implying to me that he wanted me to come back. Basically, he wanted me to come get my hair cut with him, despite the fact that I'm a disfellowshipped Jehovah's Witness and he's a believer, even though he's not baptized. And I said, yeah, I'll be back. But you know, the day after that and all the rest of that day, it was just eating me up inside. It's like really sad that it's even a conversation that has to be had. It's even a question that hangs over your head. Are you going to discriminate against me for my religious beliefs? I don't believe the same way that you do. Are you going to hate me for not being a Jehovah's Witness anymore? Are you going to ban me from your store because I don't believe the way that you do anymore? That really sucks to even have to ask that question, you know? It is discrimination, and it's a level of discrimination that I don't think many people really experience in their lives. I don't think very many people experience that feeling inside. Being hated for some intrinsic quality about who you are, some piece of your identity. Being hated for that, for something that you can't change. I'm disfellowshipped, I can't change that. And he hates me for it. And if he doesn't, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's okay with me. He asked me to come back. Maybe he's all right. If he doesn't hate me, his parents hate me. My parents hated me. My whole family hated me for a long time until they escaped too. You know, there are people out there who fucking hate me because of who I am. And that really hurts. It really sucks. I just can't stand it. This is a feeling that you can't understand unless you've experienced it. I've come to find. It's, being discriminated against, That's a feeling you can't understand unless you've felt it, being discriminated against. So anyway, point is, I don't know if I'm going back to that barber or not. He was a really nice guy. He invited me back, but he made me feel this way. Probably not intentionally. He'd probably feel bad if he realized. I don't know. But it happened. So here we are. Jehovah's Witnesses do publicly, like the governing body, and in their propaganda, publicly discourage people from being friends with outsiders. That is like a public part of their platform or whatever, their belief system. On occasion, you'll come across a Jehovah's Witness who isn't all in or doesn't fully believe in certain aspects of the religion or their belief system. They don't completely accept everything. They feel like certain parts are a bad idea, this or that. That's really, really rare to come across in cults, because cults, by their very definition, are unified. They control every aspect of your life. And this is one of the aspects that Jehovah's Witnesses control. It's the friends you're allowed to keep and the people you're allowed to marry and the things you're allowed to do and stuff like that. It sounds like you found somebody who is one of those outliers, the incredibly rare breed of going against something that the governing body and the religion as a whole outwardly condemns, being friends with outsiders. It's not technically against the rules enough that it's going to get you disfellowshipped or shunned or whatever. It's not that against the rules, but you will be a social pariah to some degree. People in the congregation, if they know you have outsider friends, will be less likely to hang out with you and associate. You see it sometimes in more rural congregations that are like out in the middle of nowhere and they're really tiny. You'll see some people in the congregation will have outsider friends and outsider hobbies, but it's very uncommon and it's a very circumstantial type of situation.
Hi, Owen. This is Sean from Washington State. I was just curious, with all the people you tend to cover, who would concern you the most in terms of a presidential bid? Obviously, another 4 years of Trump would be pretty awful, to say the least. But I almost feel like Trump fanatics, or in Greg Locke's case, former Trump fanatic, would be just as bad, if not worse. But yeah, I was curious to get your thoughts on that. Anyways, enjoy your show. Okay, bye.
I appreciate that. I think the criteria that I would use to determine which one was worst is which people are the most willing to commit acts of violence to get what they want, i.e. an ends justify the means mentality, and which people are the deepest in their conspiracy mindset. I think Greg Locke is deeply, deeply conspiratorial, way, way down there.
We so believe in our First Amendment right to gather and worship Jesus Christ that if you show up and you impede on our First Amendment right, we will meet you at the door of our tent with our Second Amendment right, because we're not playing your Democrat games. We carry a Bible for devils and we carry guns for dummies, praise God, all right? The reason we got so many popsicles in the pews is because we got too many polar bears in the pulpit, amen?
And he uses violent rhetoric a lot and says that the church should be physically fighting for what it wants and stuff like that. But I have seen more violent people out there, more violent pastors. You know, I've been thinking about doing a pastor or a televangelist tier list for a while, but I never did get around to doing that. People say Ron DeSantis would be worse, but he isn't pushing extremist violent propaganda as hard as, say, Donald Trump is. The guy is absolutely crazier than Trump and knows how to use the reins of power, but he's not using rhetoric that is intended to erode democracy as much as Trump is. It doesn't seem to me. Kat Kerr would be bad. Kat Kerr would absolutely be bad.
So right now, at this moment, we take authority over Dorian that has no right off the coast of this state or anywhere. And we hit that storm to the east right now. And I'm going to do it 3 times. We hit it to the east.
Your mom could be bad too. That's true. Just going through the chat looking for some suggestions. I would say Lance Wallnau, honestly. I would say Lance Wallnau would be the worst because he knows what he wants, he knows how to get it, and he intends to get it at any cost. He has an ends justify the means mentality, and he wants to replace the U.S. Constitution with the 10 Commandments. That's what he wants to do. He wants to control society and replace the leadership with people that are loyal to him.
3% of the population, roughly 3 to 4% of the population, are radical leftist elites. 30% of the population are evangelical born-again Christians that are inclined to go towards Pentecostal language. I mean, we're really out there. 30% against 3%, but they neutralize the church because they're also in religion. They changed the definition of marriage, so they've taken over family. They've totally taken over academia, so the education institutions are teaching leftist theology or leftist ideology and silencing conservatives. They're controlling government right now. They've taken over legacy media, Hollywood, entertainment, and arts, and now they've got Wall Street. This is 3%. 30% of the population is Christian. How is it that 30% are dominated by 3%? We want souls, and we want nations. Jesus was promised nations for his inheritance, not just churches.
John MacArthur would be another concerning choice.
The new administration will uphold religious freedom. I don't even support religious freedom. Religious freedom is what sends people to hell. To say I support religious freedom is to say I support idolatry. It's to say I support lies. I support hell. I support the kingdom of darkness. You can't say that. No Christian with half a brain would say, we support religious freedom. We support the truth.
Anyway, thank you so much for the voicemail. I really appreciate that. Interesting question.
Hey, Owen, this is Alex from Michigan. I'm calling to see what your thoughts are on sectionalism as it refers to interacting with people who disagree from you. I know your general stance is you want to try to save as many people as possible, be as nice as possible. But I want to know if you see any people as too far gone in terms of political beliefs as well as religious beliefs. Because you talk about the Jehovah's Witnesses and them just putting out the propaganda. But I want to know how far that actually goes before you consider someone too far gone. Thanks.
It's a good question. There are absolutely people that are too far gone. For example, I don't believe that my mom will ever find her way out of the religion, ever. She's too far gone. She believes it too deeply. She's studied it entirely too much. The propaganda is in her head forever. That being said, I believe that we should always afford people the courtesy or even the right of assuming that they're not too far gone. Everybody. I feel the same way about cults and cult members as I do about prisoners in jail. I feel the same way about both. There are certainly prisoners out there who are too far gone, completely unsavable, and should spend the rest of their lives in prison for society's safety. But I believe that we should afford everybody the chance to redeem themselves. Some are irredeemable. Some can't come out and be a normal person ever again. Cult members or prisoners. Some can't do it. But we have to give them the courtesy and the right to at least try. For everybody, for every single person. We shouldn't assume anybody is too far gone, even though there are people that are. That doesn't mean release every prisoner necessarily. That means create education opportunities for them, give them opportunities to learn and redeem themselves, give them opportunities to fix their lives and try to lower their time for good behavior and things like that. Rehabilitation for prisoners is my goal. Not punishment, but rehabilitation. Try to get them to a point where this isn't going to happen again. Try to get them to a point where they can rehabilitate themselves and get back on their feet. And I say the same thing about cult members. Try to get every single person to the point where they can find their way out, even if it's unlikely, even if this is the deepest cult member you've ever met, governing body member of Jehovah's Witnesses. Everybody deserves for you to give them the courtesy of assuming that they can be saved.
Hey, Owen, I would encourage you to make yourself another channel that focuses in on a telltale toolbox on basically things that people could use to help when dealing with helping people get out of religion. Short videos, that sort of thing. Thanks. Love your show.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's an interesting suggestion. I thought about something like that. I figured if I did something like it, it'd probably be a playlist rather than its own channel, because if it's a playlist on my existing channels, then it means it would benefit from the algorithmic favor that my existing channels have already. Having a small channel that is only that stuff may not, it probably wouldn't spread to a wider audience, so I'd probably do a playlist. But I think rather than doing a playlist, I would rather recommend a book that people read, and that would be the Atheist's Guide to, what is it called? A Manual for Creating Atheists by Peter Boghossian. That's the name of the book and the author. I'd recommend people read that. It's eternally useful to know how all of this works. Anthony Magnabosco pioneers it and has modified it and helped it grow and stuff, but Peter Boghossian is a psychologist who wrote the book on street epistemology, who invented it. This email came from Chad. Hi, Owen. First of all, let me say that I love your channel and you do a great job. Thank you for everything you do. I appreciate that, Chad. What is your take, or what have you observed regarding the reactions of the Christian church as a whole to these extreme evangelicals and their false prophecies? My brother-in-law is a pastor, and we recently had a conversation about this very issue. I asked him what the Christian church was doing, if anything, to curtail or subdue some of these extremists like Greg Locke. He told me that there really isn't a leadership per se to handle the situation, unlike the Catholic Church, where the Pope and the leadership would subdue or handle someone if they felt it was out of place from the Vatican. Yeah, that's true. Protestantism is more of an amorphous type of thing. It's not as structured and strict. There are strict hierarchies within Protestantism, and as they get more and more strict and controlling, you get into serious cult territory. But, you know, the extremists are the cults. The extremists are the strict top-down hierarchies. That's the problem. That's who we're trying to deal with. By their nature, the fact that these moderate Christian groups are not controlling or don't have a leadership, that's the thing they'd need to try to target the extremists in the first place and root it out. And it's the very thing that they don't have that makes them not an extremist, effectively. Continuing on with the email, it was interesting because my brother-in-law told me he was afraid that extremists like Greg Locke would ultimately lead to the church being taxed. Unlikely. That's not going to happen. And that led to a conspiracy theory that leaders in our society would use people like Greg Locke to excuse taxing all of the churches, to which I found absurd. Yeah, that's absurd. Not happening in the United States. Not going to happen. But martyrdom is the narrative for the church, it seems. To me, it seems highly hypocritical of the church as a whole to attack non-Christians in our society when instead they should be cleaning their own house. I'm curious to know whether you think the Christian church will ever do so. Thanks. Hope you're well. Thanks again for everything you do. Chad from Chicago. I appreciate that. Yeah, I absolutely do think that they should be cleaning their own house. But, you know, it's easier to attack the other side than your own side. And Christians, by default, view themselves as like birds of a feather, you know. Birds of a feather flock together, as they say. I don't think that there's ever going to be a time when Christianity or Protestantism tackles the extremism problem. I think as a society in the U.S., we're going to have to try to tackle the extremism problem in various different ways. But the church, I don't think we can count on the church to try to tackle it. They would rather go after non-believers, unfortunately. This one's from Thomas. Hey, Owen, love the show. I'm not political, but what do you think of the extreme left? Just curious, because I think that there are an extreme side of both the right and the left. From Thomas from Denmark. There definitely is an extreme left, for sure. There is too left-wing. I haven't seen it in the United States. You're from Denmark. I know that there's an extreme left. I don't know if it's in Denmark or not. There really isn't one in the U.S. Not one that has any kind of serious power anyways. They exist. They're out there, and you know, they're nutty for sure, but they have no real power or sway. You can go your entire life and never encounter one. I know somebody said tankies in the chat. That's true. Tankies would be an example of the extreme left, and there are definitely problematic people over there, but they're so few and far between in the United States that they're not even on my radar. If they show up and start doing some unhinged stuff, I'll be the first to call it out, but I haven't seen it yet, so.